Rayleigh was the second professor here, an aristocrat, Baron Rayleigh, John Strutt, who mainly earned his living from a series of family farms in Essex, which grew dairy cattle. And when I was growing up in London, you still got milk delivered in vans with Lord Rayleigh's Dairies written on the side, right? And in a marvellous letter, when Rayleigh is discussing whether or not he's going to take the job in succession to Maxwell, who was a very close personal friend, Rayleigh says, well, I'll take the job for a few years until the agricultural depression is over, and then I'll go back to the estate. The estate is at Tarling down in Essex, beautiful house with its own private lab, and Rayleigh partly treated the Cavendish as a kind of extension of his private inquiries. He completed the measurement of the ohm, the electrical resistance work. He hired new, clever laboratory demonstrators. He massively expanded student numbers. He instituted a completely new, revolutionary really, system of laboratory training, in which next to every desk in the classrooms inside was a manuscript book with a description of the experiment next to it. And the student was expected to read the instructions, perform the experiments, write the results, and then move on to the next experiment. So you had the invention of that standard Cavendish model of how you train intellectuals to use their hands, which is by reading and then experimenting. There are magnificent anecdotes from people who went through the system about how cack-handed they were. They couldn't use a Wheatstone bridge. They always made batteries blow up and so on. And I think there is where a certain kind of myth about Cambridge physics, Cambridge science in general really, comes from, which is the myth of sealing wax and string, as it's called. In other words, the myth that these are amateur gentlemen with not many commercial interests who use cheap, improvised apparatus to discover the secrets of the world. The only bit of that story that's true is the last sentence. They did unlock the secrets of the world, but they are industrialists. They are extremely well networked to global electromagnetic power and light systems, and a lot of the equipment is very expensive and highly precise and doesn't just rely on sealing wax and string. But the way in which the students were taught tended to cultivate the idea of the ingenious amateur improviser. It's the sort of grandfather figure of the boffin who will appear as Q in James Bond movie. No hair, long white coat, does things cheaply, they work, unlike the gee-whiz science of the Americans and the Germans. That's not, I think, historically accurate. It's very important politically. When the agricultural depression ended, Rayleigh went back to his farms and then eventually to take over the big new lab at the Royal Institution in London, where in the 1890s he and his colleagues, William Ramsay especially, were the first to identify the noble gases, argon, neon, especially argon in the 1890s.